Questions? Did they do any psychological testing? Did they ask you why? What was your motive?
It was completely self-diagnosed.
3 sons.
Who all
You
have
have
had
one
issues with
mother.
you
You can't speak for them.
I would
You've
rather
got
be
one
motherless
mother.
10 times.
I find that all the time.
Yeah, if you get the left and the right and talk about what we agree on, everybody would agree. We want America to be the #1 country.
Cancel culture's got nothing on Dr. Phil. He's calling for counsel culture instead. What's that? Well, it's not about shutting people up, it's about talking it out. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now back to the video.
In the world, we want to be the leading superpower, the leading educational power, the leading in technology, everything. Why are you in a homeless shelter?
I was in a homeless shelter because I got kicked out in 6 inches of snow.
But some folks aren't happy about it. They're saying Dr. Phil's the one who needs to be canceled. Why? Because he dared to speak up against the woke mob. Buckle up, because this gets wild. You know what's crazy? People are getting fired for jokes now, like actual comedians losing their jobs over stuff they said on stage. It's gotten so bad that some comics are scared to even perform at colleges anymore. Can you believe that? The places that used to be all about free speech and new ideas are now where jokes go to die.
You know, if you really spend time to do that, you're sometimes surprised at how little you really disagree on.
Right.
And it's not just the comedians who are freaking out. Students these days are demanding safe spaces and trigger warnings for everything. It's like they can't handle hearing anything that might make them uncomfortable. I mean, come on, that's not how the real world works. Get this, there was this one comedian, Khan, who got told by a college advisor that he couldn't talk about race, religion, politics, gender, or sexuality.
You began to schedule time to get a double mastectomy.
I haven't had any top surgeries, but I did get approved for it.
Do I get better when they do the exorcisms? Well, because you're supposed to, and you believe that, and...
Like, what's left to joke about? The weather. But it gets even crazier. They told him not to make eye contact with the students. Seriously, what are these kids, some kind of royalty that can't be looked at? Dr. Phil's got some strong words about all this. He says we're raising a generation that can't handle real life. And you know what? He's got a point. How are these kids gonna survive in the real world if they can't even hear a joke without falling apart? But it's not just comedy that's under attack. This woke nonsense is spreading to workplaces and everyday life too. HR complaints are going through the roof over stuff people say.
Or is the system turned on its head? And these guys are not working one job. They're not working 2 jobs. And I think if you go look up certain personality disorders, you might see some of those things appear.
And get this, over 40 tenured professors have gotten fired because of cancel culture. It's like nobody's job is safe anymore. Dr. Phil also pointed out how kids these days are always on their phones. He said, people have lost the art of face-to-face conversation. And he's right. How are we supposed to talk things out and understand each other if we can't even look up from our screens? So now everyone's walking on eggshells, afraid to speak their minds. You never know what innocent thing you might say that'll get you canceled next. It's like we're living in some kind of dystopian novel where free speech is dead and the thought police are always watching. But wait, it gets even crazier.
It's like out of the goodness of your heart to try and make sure that they're making the right decision. Anything that goes against their narrative is just immediately labeled as transphobic.
Need validation from you or anybody else. You can't name one time I've ever asked you to call me a woman.
You can't, because you know I'm not.
But I didn't ask you to.
Okay, don't.
You know why?
Just when you thought political correctness couldn't get any more absurd, along comes a list of offensive words that'll make your head spin. And trust me, some of these are so ridiculous you'll think I'm making it up, but I'm not. This is real life in 2023, folks, and it's about to get even weirder. You know what words are on the chopping block now? Mom and dad. Yeah, you heard that right. Apparently calling your parents by these basic titles is offensive now. What's next? Banning hello because it discriminates against people who can't hear. But it doesn't stop there. The list of offensive words keeps growing faster than you can keep up.
You're gonna be proven to be the liar today,
Well,
not me.
not unless you stop talking.
I'm just angry, Dr. Phil.
Well,
on
actually,
his show and have a doctor
differences
try to
within the
convince my
body
son that he's
for
a woman,
someone
I
that
would've
feels the
never
way
came.
you do. It's not just in your
Got it.
mind.
But regardless,
It's like there's a secret committee somewhere coming up with new ways to make everyday language taboo. And it's not just random people on the internet getting worked up about this stuff. No, schools and companies are actually banning common phrases to avoid offending anyone. Get this, there's a school out there that told teachers they can't even say boys and girls in class anymore. Can you imagine?
For you, but it's not like, wow, that's radical, which means it's very likely.
These days, if you tell a parent if their child thinks that they might be transgender or has gender dysphoria, to wait and really consider it and maybe seek other therapy.
Good morning, small humans of various genders or non-genders. That's what we're heading towards if this madness doesn't stop. But don't worry, Dr. Phil's got a solution. He says we need counsel culture, not cancel culture. And you know what? He might be onto something here. Instead of just shutting people down and canceling them for every little thing, we should actually talk things out. Dr. Phil put it like this: if you say something that's offensive to my values, I should counsel with you about it, not cancel you. Now, that's some common sense right there. Imagine if people actually listened to each other instead of just screaming, "You're canceled" at the first sign of disagreement. This counsel culture thing could be a game changer for free speech. Instead of walking on eggshells all the time, afraid to say anything, we could have real conversations again. Dr. Phil warns that cancel culture is killing free speech. He says, being offended is often a personal issue, but that doesn't mean you get to shut down others or offend them just because you don't agree.
You are a transgender woman, that your brain is much more aligned functionally.
I was gonna be with somebody who accepted me for who I am.
Okay, well, I know you're young, but you fell for that. Come to Vegas, I'm gonna make you famous.
But here's the thing, some people are starting to fight back against this craziness. They're standing up for common sense and free speech. And maybe, just maybe, there's hope for us yet. Dr. Phil's not messing around anymore. He says God's calling him to speak out against all this woke nonsense. And you know what? It's about time someone with a platform stood up to these crazy ideas. He's warning us that if we don't push back, America's going down the drain fast. And he's right. Just look around, everything's going crazy. We're raising kids who can't handle real life, banning words left and right, and acting like being offended is some kind of superpower.
If that's your symbol system and that's what works in the short term, that's fine. But then you are left with what we are left with, which are the same symptoms. Questions? Did they do any psychological testing? Did they ask you why? What was your motive?
It was completely self-evident.
Dr. Phil's got the right idea. We need to bring back good old-fashioned values like hard work and personal responsibility. It's time to stop walking on eggshells and start speaking our minds again. If we don't stand up for common sense and free speech now, it might be too late. So what are you waiting for? Let's take our country back before it's gone for good.